Hey guys, Stay Patient here and welcome to another edition of the Trophy Hunters update. Now the last couple weeks videos have been a bit rushed because I was so busy at the time, but we're back on track this week. I've had I've had a chance to sort of get more acquainted with this week's list and I'm a bit better prepared. So we've got some games to share with you, we've got some easy platinums, and we've also got the trophies for Battlefield 1 to take a look at, which I know a lot of you are excited about. But let's start off with a couple of trailers that I wanted to share with you. Now this first one is Mantis Burn Racing. This isn't an easy platinum, from what I can tell. It's not got a very high completion rating, but it's a game that was released a couple of weeks ago, and I just thought it looked kind of cool, and it ties in with the next trailer that's going to follow on immediately after this one. But it's kind of a top-down racing game along the lines of that MotorStorm RC that came out last generation on PS3 and Vita, and that was quite fun. But this seems a bit more fleshed out. It looks like a really cool game, you know, if you like racing games. Now you may remember a game called oh crumbs, it was a drift game. I'll have to find it in a second because the name eludes me. But there was a game that involved, you know, drifting from a top-down angle through different courses, not so much racetracks, but kind of obstacles and things like that. A bit like a Gymkhana event. And we'll take a look on PSN profiles in a moment. But the reason I wanted to show you Mantis Burn Racing before going on to this one, which is Grand Prix Rock'n Racing, is because these three games that I've just referred to have all come out over the last few weeks. And before these, we hadn't had a top-down racing game like this for years, ever since MotorStorm RC, really. And before that, you may remember years and years ago on the PS1, we had Micro Machines V3. So it's quite strange, really, that we've had three games of a similar type all release within quite close proximity of each other. So I don't know if that's the start of a new trend or whether that's just a reflection of the fact that it's easier to make racing games from a top-down angle if you're a small indie studio. But that Grand Prix game that you're just watching is in our list here, and it's one of the games we're going to highlight this week because it does look like a very easy platinum. So it's right here, Grand Prix Rock'n Racing, and if we click on it here, you'll notice that the platinum has been earned by 25% of people on this website, which is a decent percentage, really. It's not particularly high, so there's obviously some level of challenge to it because apparently this game sucks, basically. It's not a good game. It's got terrible reviews, so it's probably one of those titles that people only buy if they want the trophies. So if that's the case, then it could be argued that this is quite a low completion percentage, because if it's a kind of game people are only buying because they've heard it's easy and they're diving in and trying to get all the trophies because that's the only reason they're playing it, then you probably expect there to be a higher percentage. But it might just be that people struggle with this genre. So if you are a racing game fan, if you find them really difficult, then you may struggle with it. But if you do enjoy racing games and you've played top-down racing games before, then this might well be one of those nice easy platinums that you can go for. If we have a look down the actual list itself, you'll notice that we need to finish all of the different Grand Prix in first position. So in other words, win every race. Then we have all those Grand Prix again, but we need to beat a certain time in the time trial mode. And then there's literally just a handful of miscellaneous ones. These two refer to winning the championship during your first season. And I'm guessing they'll come naturally on the way to winning all of these Grand Prix, unless the championship is a separate mode to the Grand Prix, to the separate Grand Prix. Then we've got reach high speed, complete a set box, which might be like a sort of hub kind of challenge mode. I'm not really sure, I haven't looked into that, but I can't see it being difficult. It's got 41% completion there, so it can't be too bad. And then you've got to play with 4 friends, so one multiplayer trophy, but there is split screen in this game, so I'm guessing you can possibly, even if you've got only one controller, you might be able to sign that controller into one sort of guess the count at a time, and then just complete the race. Maybe have to complete it with each of the 4 players by switching user, going into the cross-media bar and switching user. But however you approach that, whether you play with actual friends, whether you've got 4 controllers, whether you've got one, maybe it'll work with just one. Quite a lot of games do. But I think this is going to be one of those that, as long as you're fairly comfortable with racing games, it looks like a nice easy platinum. So that's the first one I kind of wanted to highlight for you guys. And of course, like I said before, Mantis Burn Racing isn't an easy platinum, but it does look good. The Grand Prix Rockin' Racing is apparently terrible, so don't buy it if you only enjoy, or if you only want to play games that you're going to enjoy. But if you're after an easy platinum, then maybe it's for you. The Mantis Burn Racing looks a lot better, looks a lot more fun, but is going to be harder. So, if you're up for a challenge, in fact, we can take a look at it here. Mantis Burn Racing, look, 3% of people who've played it have platted it, so that's quite low. I mean, 3 out of 96 players, and with this being a trophy site and it only tracking people that have used the site before or that have been looked up by other people, so anyone whose details have been put into the site by themselves or someone else, all those people appear on the site, and I think that's how it works. It certainly isn't everyone, but you can find anyone on here. You can search for any person, and I think as soon as you search for them, it kind of adds them to the database, but I'm not 100% sure. It might just be members or whatever. But either way, the only players that are tracked on this site are going to be trophy hunters, basically. So when you get a game with a low completion percentage on here, then the likelihood is that the actual completion percentage, if you were to look on the PS4 itself, would be incredibly low. So a 3%, that's probably like 0.1% when you look at the actual real-time kind of worldwide, I guess, percentage of completion, platinum percentage. Anyway, try and get that out. Yeah, we're not going to look through all the trophies here necessarily, but as you can see, it's going to be a bit of a challenge, but we all enjoy a challenge at times. So if you're feeling nostalgic for those old style sort of top-down racing games, there's a couple for you to choose from. And I was going to check up on that drift game, wasn't I? This was the 3rd game that's come out recently. Absolute Drift Zen Edition. There it is. So there you go. Actually, this is pretty lucky that we've looked at this, because it seems to be another relatively straightforward platinum. Again, if you're into racing games, because 21% is usually, for a game like this, it usually implies that there may be a lot of people who expected it to be easy because of the percentage and then tried it and struggled because they're not into racing games. Because I know, people talk about easy games and hard games, but a lot of that can often come down to your ability in a certain genre. Obviously, if you've got an adventure game where it's just point and click and you've got to literally follow a list of instructions, then anyone can do it. But some games are very, very easy for certain people, but would be difficult for others. So this might be another one worth checking out, guys. Absolute Drift Zen Edition. And of course, we already mentioned Grand Prix Rockin' Racing. So we've already got a couple of nice, potentially easy platinums, if they're your kind of thing. So if we scroll up from the bottom here, obviously we've got loads more VR stuff. That's why there's so many new releases this week. In fact, I think basically, or almost everything on the list here is new since the last video I did, or the last update. The next one I want to take a look at is Manual Samuel. I was going to share a trailer with you guys, but I'm deliberately keeping the sound off the trailers. I'm not including the sound just in case it matches up with anything that's copyrighted. And this game is very much about the sound. It's visually crazy and kind of fun to watch as well, but only if you understand what's going on and what's involved in playing the game itself. So when you watch a trailer, it's really the explanation of how the game works that makes it interesting to watch. So I will recommend that you guys check out maybe the trailer or even some gameplay for this, because it looks really crazy. It looks kind of fun. Really kooky. It kind of reminds me of Octodad, which came out last, was that? No, that was this gen, wasn't it, on PS4? So on Octodad, you control 4 different limbs. You're controlling an octopus who's dressed as a man, and he's got obviously 8 limbs, but 2 are going out one sleeve, 2 out the other, and 2 out of each leg. And you control every single one of his limbs individually by holding down a shoulder button and then moving an analog stick, and you kind of get the hang of it, but it's always very clumsy and just a lot of fun to play. And this kind of reminds me of that, but this takes it a step further where you have to sort of control everything. You have to remember to breathe, you have to move, like every movement that this guy makes, you have to initiate. And you have to press all the right buttons at the right time. And there's a lot of things to remember. And from what I've seen, gameplay-wise, it's quite confusing. People are finding it quite mind-boggling to try and get their head around it. But it does look fun, and I get the feeling that it's going to be an easy platinum once you understand how the game works and once you've got the controls down. Actually playing the game itself could be very difficult. But once you know how to play the game and once you've got into a rhythm, then I think, although the game's difficult, I think the trophies themselves will be fairly straightforward. So I think in time, this, the percentage of completion on this is probably going to rise, but it could take a while. So it's probably worth checking out if you've got a minute. Check out the trailer or check out the gameplay or something. There's a lot of people who've got gameplay up from the PC version, which has been out for a while, I think. So if we scroll back down, we've got the Playroom VR. Now, I've not tried this yet, but it is free to download, so I'm going to give it a try at some point. Some of you may have seen my video that I put up a few days ago, sort of showcasing my very first attempt at VR, and it just made me feel sick, to be honest. But since then, I have tried playing Drive Club again, using my wheel, my racing seat and wheel and pedals and everything. And it went a lot better, a lot smoother, I wasn't feeling quite so ill. At first, I was a little bit disorientated and dizzy, but I think the fact that I was using a racing wheel that has feedback, so you've got some sense of the movement, even if it's not in your body, it's sort of in your hands, you've got some kind of physical feedback implying that you are moving. And that helps. So for those of you who are wanting to buy VR for racing games, and you've got a racing seat, then just bear that in mind, that I think using the racing seat, or at least using a steering wheel where you've got that kind of physical feedback for your brain to kind of balance out, 'cause the whole thing about motion sickness is that your body can feel the movement, but you can't see it, or vice versa. Your body can't feel any movement, but you can see movement. So that kind of that applies to when you're in a car, for instance, and you're reading a book, so you can't see out the windows, you're looking down, you're reading a book, and because your brain can sense that you're moving, you're swaying around, and you can feel the G-force that's created by the car's movement, but your eyes can't see anything moving because you're sat in the car, you're looking down, and you can't see out the window, so everything you see around you is just static. That's when your brain gets confused and makes you ill. And the same applies when you switch those two. So rather than not being able to see the movement on VR, you can see movement. So you're racing in a car, you can see everything rushing by you, but you can't feel any movement. So again, your brain gets confused and it makes your stomach sick. So that's why I say when you're using a racing wheel, you can at least feel some sense of movement, so it stops your brain getting quite so confused. That may be it. I think that's just my theory, really, but it seems to make sense that that would be the case. And it's probably partly just trying VR again, just giving it another chance. Just probably every time you use it, your mind will get a bit more accustomed to the idea of seeing movement around you but not feeling it. So yeah, I'd say even if you're concerned about getting motion sickness, I do recommend trying out VR because, to be honest, not everyone experiences it. I've let a few of my friends and family try it out. My uncle, who I thought would get really ill, he was fine. My brother was fine, and a friend of his was fine. I got sick though, or at least I felt queasy, and my cousin was even worse than me. He got in the car. He was looking around. He loved it. You know, he was checking out the back seat and looking outside the window and everything. And then as soon as he started driving, the first corner he went around, he literally had to take the VR off. He couldn't keep going, and he had to go to the bathroom. He wasn't sick, but he had to, he went to the bathroom just in case. So I do recommend trying to find a way of testing it out. If they've got it in a local store, before you go and buy it, go and try it out. But it's difficult because every game is different. So some games will have a lot of movement, some games you'll be sat still. And there are quite cool games in this list that involve just staying still, doing something, that involve just sitting there, not moving around. So they're not going to cause any motion sickness, as far as I can tell. I'm going to give you guys a bit more feedback when I do get a chance to try out the rest of the demos on the demo disc. And I have bought Drive Club VR. In fact, while we're on that subject, we'll have a quick look at it here because it is in this list. Where did it go? There we go. So Drive Club VR, the cool thing about this is the fact that if you own the season pass for Drive Club, the original version of Drive Club, which is super cheap, I think. I'm not sure if the price has gone back up, but for a long time, you could get Drive Club, the game, the original game, as well as the season pass, which includes everything. And there is a ton of extra content, loads and loads of DLC. It's probably the best value package on PS4, even though it had a rocky launch. You could get all of that for like £7.39, which is absolutely insane. The season pass itself was £20 to begin with, and even that was cheap for what you got. You got well over 20 proper full-size DLC packs with like a whole new competition, I suppose. A whole new set of new events, and they all introduce new things like weather and different like nighttime effects and stuff like that. So there'd be a ton of new content for each one. There's well over 20 of them. So £20 for all of them, including loads of other little bits of content here and there, almost like microtransaction style content, such as extra cars and things like that. There's well over 100 pieces of DLC when you bring it all together. And you could, I'm not sure if it's the same price now, but you could get all that for $7.39. And now that also gives you a discount of, it works out $20 or I think 15 or 16 pounds off the price of Drive Club VR. So if you've got the Drive Club Season Pass, the VR game is usually $40 or £30, but I've just bought it for £16, so that's £14 off. It's basically half price. And if you're in the US, it's usually $40 and it's down to $20 if you own the Season Pass. So even if you only want to buy Drive Club VR and you're not worried about playing the original or the DLC or any of that, I would still recommend buying the DLC, because if you've got the Season Pass for, £7 or whatever it is, that's going to give you a discount of much more than that off. It's going to give you £14 or $20 off the price of Drive Club VR. Anyway, I've kind of spoken enough about the price now. Let's have a look at the trophies. Now, no one has platted it so far, but the thing is, I was thinking about this. With the VR games, they're going to be very difficult to gauge the difficulty for them based on their percentage of completion, because there's going to be a lot of people just playing these for fun. They're going to buy the game, or like with Drive Club, it's quite cheap for those with the season pass, so they're going to think, well, I'll pick that up and I'll try it out. And it's really going to be a gimmicky sort of novelty. So not everyone playing these games is going to necessarily be looking at getting the trophies. And even if they are, you can't really play VR for a long period of time. Some people can, but you don't want to be sat in VR for hours and hours on end. It kind of shuts you out from the real world. And if you do get problems with motion sickness and things like that, you're only going to really want short stints. So if you are going for a platinum and it's a relatively long plat, say it's like 20 hours long or something, then that could take you a while to earn, which is probably why a lot of these VR games have quite low completion percentages, because some people are playing them just for fun, and those people after trophies are probably taking a while because they need to take lots of breaks in between their play sessions. but as it is with a lot of racing games, it's quite difficult to gauge the difficulty level of the platinum, because you can look through the trophies and it will say win this like competition or get a certain time in a time trial, and until you know how difficult the different events are and things like that, there's very little to go on when it comes to the difficulty rating. But it doesn't look too bad. I mean, Drive Club itself is a relatively difficult game, but if you spend enough time on it, you do build up an affinity with it, and you build up enough skill to be able to earn the platinum for the original game, which was relatively easy actually. This one is probably going to be harder because it's racing using a new platform that we're not used to, VR. But I'm going to be giving it a go, and I'll probably, rather than try and gauge how hard this is going to be just from the trophies, I'll let you guys know, when I get a chance to play it, I'll let you know in one of these future videos how difficult the trophies are from my own experience. But if we go back down, obviously we've got lots more of these VR titles. Of course, we started off talking about Playroom, which is another one that I need to try out. There's not a lot of feedback. I can imagine it might end up being relatively simple, but once again, you'll see that it's got a low completion percentage because there are going to be a lot of people playing this. Because it's free, anyone who's got VR is going to download this basically. In fact, I think it automatically downloads when you first plug it in. So there's going to be a lot of people not worried about trophies, and that's going to be another one that I'm going to try out when I get a chance, and I'll give you guys some feedback. But there is one game which I think we almost got to here, Job Simulator. Now, this is an easy platinum, and this sort of backs up my theory that no matter how easy a VR game is, it's still going to have a relatively low completion percentage, because although 18% is quite high, it's not as high as the difficulty or the estimated difficulty of this game would kind of imply, if that makes sense. Because if we take a look at the trophy guide that someone's kindly put together here, JPBM, thanks to him, this is for Job Simulator, and he gives it a 1 out of 10 in difficulty, and he says it takes less than 5 hours. Now, there's no difficulty thread or like estimated time to completion thread or anything like that yet, so there's no votes to go on. But this guy calls himself a PSVR enthusiast, so he's obviously very into it, and I'm guessing he's going to be putting up a guide that's legitimate. He's not like just trolling or whatever. It's not been stickied yet, but if anyone calls a game 1 out of 10 in difficulty, then even if it's a genre you're going to struggle with, it's only ever going to be like a 3, It's never going to be a 1 for someone and then like a 6 for someone else. It doesn't work like that. As soon as you get up around like 3 or 4, it might be a 3 or 4 for one person, it might be a 7 for someone else, because they're both kind of in the mid-range. But if one person finds it to be so easy, they're happy to rate it as a 1 out of 10, then you can pretty much guarantee that everyone's going to have a relatively simple time with it, relatively easy time. So this is the first sort of, I guess, confirmed easy platinum for VR. Now, I'm not sure of the price on the US store, but on the UK store, it's like £23.99 if I remember rightly, £23.99, around about that amount. I was hoping it was going to be cheaper because it looks like a very basic, very short kind of, almost like a mini game, like a lot of the VR games are, but I suppose there's a lot of money that goes into developing them because of the VR aspect. So I guess they've kind of got to make that money back, haven't they? But the other cool thing about it is that there are stacking trophies for it. Now, to those of you who don't understand how stacking trophies work, because I always use that term whenever there's a game that's got stacking trophies, and I know some people have asked on some of my videos what it means exactly, and I kind of just assumed everyone knew, which is wrong of me because I just kind of waffle on and I forget to explain some things occasionally. But what it means, when the game has a stacking trophy list, it means that different versions of the game, and when I say different versions, I mean versions from different countries or on different consoles, so exactly the same game, But let's say a game releases on PS3 and on PS4, for instance. So like a FIFA game might come out on PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4. Now, those are two different versions of the same game, and usually they have stacking trophy lists, at least the FIFA ones do, I mean. So if you played the game on PS3, you could earn all the trophies on there and earn the platinum, but you could then go and play the game on PS4 and earn all the trophies all over again. So it would have two separate trophy lists that stack on top of each other. That's where the term comes from. You can stack the trophies, whereas some other games might be available on PS3 and PS4, but they might just share one trophy list. So Destiny is a good example of that. There's only one trophy list for Destiny. If you play the game on PS3 and then you transfer over to PS4, all the trophies that you've already earned are still there, and you can keep adding to that same trophy list, but you can't earn them for a second time. There's only one list. So if we scroll up here, there may be an example. Oh, okay. So on screen here, we've got Ronin. Now, I don't know anything about this game, but you'll see that it's PS4 and PS Vita. So if it says, two different consoles on the right here, if it's got two different consoles or three different consoles listed, that means that the trophy list is shared between both. So whether you play the PS4 one or the PS Vita one, you're earning trophies from the same list. But if you have something like this here, Job Simulator, now these are both PS4, but it's got two separate lists, and that's because sometimes when a game releases in multiple countries, as all of them do, occasionally, for whatever reason, the game will have a separate trophy list in Europe, for instance, as it does in America. Now, a good example of this is Wolfenstein: The New Order. Now, Wolfenstein had a slightly different release in Germany. They changed things, but they took out all the swastikas, anywhere that it alluded to the Nazi regime, any swastika flags or posters, anything to do with that side of things, any sort of dialogue that referred to the Nazis, that was all removed and replaced. So the game was very slightly different. It had different coding in Germany. And that meant that if you played the normal European version, so if you bought the game in the UK, you could earn all the trophies, earn the platinum, but then you could buy the game from Germany. And because it was slightly different, it had a whole new trophy set. Now, the trophies are exactly the same, but you can earn them again. You can earn all the same ones again. So on your list, you could have, you could actually have the PS3 version of Wolfenstein, and the PS4 version, which has a stacking list, and the German PS4 version, which has another stacking list. So you could have multiple platinums from basically the same game. So I hope that makes sense, guys, because Job Simulator is a good example of a regional stacking list. So in other words, a game that has different trophies in different regions or different countries. And if you've watched my top 10 easiest and fastest PS4 Platinums video, you'll notice that games like Orc Slayer and Skyscrapers, both of them I talked about having stacking lists, and that's what makes them so good. They're easy platinums and they're nice and cheap to buy, but you can also go and buy them from, say you're in the UK, you can buy it at home on your main account and platinum it, and then you could start up a US account, buy it there, and earn the platinum all over again and have two platinums from the same game. So that's stacking lists. I hope that makes sense, and I apologize to those of you who understand, you know all about stacking trophies. I'm sure 95% of you are fully aware of what that means, and I've probably just wasted a few minutes of your time, so I apologize for that. But for those of you who weren't entirely sure, hopefully that clears things up. So if you come on this site on psnprofiles.com and you see a game that has more than one listing, it means that you can earn those trophies multiple times, which is really cool. So Job Simulator is a bit more expensive, like I mentioned, a bit more money than I expected it to be because it's quite basic. But obviously with it being VR, all of the VR games are a bit overpriced because they probably cost a lot to make. But that's like the first sort of properly confirmed, nice, easy platinum. So if you do have VR and you're looking to buy a game that's going to give you a nice easy trophy set to sort of start off your VR trophy collection, as it were, then Job Simulator is probably the way to go. Now, just below Job Simulator, we have this game Thumper. Now, we're actually going to check out a quick trailer for this right now. Now, as you can see, this is a super fast game. It's kind of like a music-based rhythm action game, but it's also referred to as a horror game. And I think if you don't get these button presses right, I think there's something to do with you getting closer and closer to your doom, or like everything's become scarier as you go along. And you may play games like Frequency or Amplitude, where there's several buttons you've got to press at the right time, almost like a Rock Band game or a Guitar Hero game, but using a controller. But this one just seems to have the one single button press, but it's so fast that it takes all your concentration to get that right and to get it on point. So it looks crazy. It looks absolutely nuts. But if you watch some reviews for it, or if you go ahead and watch the trailer with the sound and everything, then you'll realize that it's actually meant to be really awesome. It's got really good reviews from everyone that's played it, and it just looks like the ideal game for VR. Although you're moving very quickly through an area, I feel like it might not, contribute quite so much towards motion sickness, because it's quite simple. The visual style is quite simple. There's not really anything passing by you apart from the pathway you're on. And it's simple enough that you're just focused on, this one trail, and you're having to press buttons at the right time, but it sounds really, really intense. And with it being VR, that just adds to that feeling of tension, because you're surrounded by this game. There's no getting away from it. And the sound, if you guys go ahead and check out the full trailer on YouTube with the sound, it really adds to the suspense, I guess. And it looks like a great game. It's getting 9s out of 10. 9 out of 10 scores across the board, it seems like. So if you've got VR and you're looking for potentially a challenge, I think this is going to be one of the tricky ones. But it's quite simple. The actual requirements are quite basic, but it will be difficult to complete them, if that makes sense. So if we take a look at the actual trophy set, it's quite an interesting trophy set, because the platinum isn't, it doesn't say to earn all the other trophies. It boils down to the same thing, because as you can see there, it says get S rank on all levels. So we've got 9 levels here. For these trophies, you have to complete each one. And then for the rest of the trophies, you have to get an S rank on each one. So that's literally all you have to do, is get S rank on every single trophy, which is why I say it's quite straightforward, although probably not easy. It's going to be difficult, but straightforward in the sense that it's easy to understand what's required of you. You just literally have to play each level and do as well as you can until you've earned that S rank. But I just thought it was quite interesting as well to point out the wording of the platinum, because technically if you get the S rank on all levels, then you will have earned all the other trophies. So it does still work in the usual way that a platinum does function, where you earn the other trophies and it pops, but they've worded it differently, which is quite unique. I've not really seen that before, I don't think, so I just thought I'd point that out. Pardon me. So where did we get to? We're kind of skipping up and down quite a bit, aren't we? We've got the Batman games, of course. We're not going to talk about them because they've been out for years on PS3. It's exactly the same trophy list from what I understand, so if you enjoy Batman, as most people do, you might want to dive back into them. Although we have had Arkham Knight recently, so you may have had your fill. But moving on from there, we've got another stacking list here, just to give another example of that. Quite a lot of games, a lot of the VR games don't have any platinums. We don't usually focus on them, actually, but there's one here I'm going to talk about because this looks really fun. And this is a game, it's a multiplayer game, a co-op game, where one of you is in the VR headset and they've got a bomb in front of them. And obviously there's lots of bombs in the game. But someone else will either be online with them, speaking to them through a headset, or they'll be in the same room, doing it via couch co-op. And the second person can't see the bomb, but they've got like an instruction booklet or manual or something. And they need to ask the person who's in the VR questions to try and ascertain which bomb they're looking at. And then they need to instruct them on how to defuse it. So there'll be wires that you can cut, there'll be buttons to press, all sorts of like numbers to input and things like that. And you have to really work together well to be able to defuse it in the time limit. And there's videos of some people playing this on YouTube. I found it quite enjoyable checking them out. I didn't watch the whole video, but it looks like the kind of game that's really going to promote that cooperative play that you know, a lot of games have it where you're both shooting enemies at the same time or whatever, but it's quite nice to have a game where you really do need to coordinate your efforts properly because you've got a time limit. You need to work on your communication skills, and you need to really kind of play in a way that helps the other person. So it's true cooperative play, if you ask me. But if we carry on, because it's going to end up being a very long show today by the looks of it. We've got the Assembly, which we're not going to look too much into, but this is a story-based VR game, which there aren't many of, to be honest. A lot of them are sort of mini games or like racing games like Drive Club or whatever. But this is one of the only proper story-based PS4 titles. And it's got an interesting mechanic where you can move around using the analog sticks, or to sort of help with the motion sickness, you can look at a point ahead of you and you can press a button to teleport there. So it will just put you in the new point. So you haven't got all the swaying around and the movement that comes along with using the analog sticks. So that's quite cool that they've incorporated that. I'm not sure what the story is really about. I didn't want to spoil it for myself. So just in case I do get around to playing it, I'm afraid I can't really fill you in as to the details of the story. But even if I could, I probably wouldn't, because I wouldn't want to spoil it for you guys. But it looks kind of interesting. If we keep scrolling up here, we've got, obviously we've talked about Grand Prix Rockin' Racing. That's not a VR game, so if you're after an easy platinum and you're fairly okay with racing games, then that's the game for you. Drive Club, I'm going to try that out soon. Yes, okay, here's the next big one. Let's just scroll up before we look at Battlefield. We've got the Harry Potter Lego games have been re-released on PS4, which is very interesting, and it kind of makes me wonder if they're going to go back through and re-release all of the old Lego games, or maybe the more popular ones, like possibly the Star Wars games, especially with Star Wars having made a comeback recently. I wonder if they'll maybe bring back the Lego Star Wars trilogy or whatever it was from the PS3 generation. But obviously they're going to be easy platinums for those of you looking for nice easy games. They can take a little bit of time, the Lego games. They're not super quick, but depending on which one you're looking at, some of them take longer than others, obviously. But we're not going to talk about them. Obviously, everyone knows Lego's nice and easy. But we have got Battlefield 1. The trophies have been announced, and they look, I was taking a look through them earlier, and if we're going to look through each one individually, not spending ages on each one, we're going to whiz through just to give you guys an idea of what's required for this trophy set, because there's not a huge amount of trophies. I think it's 30 for a Battlefield game. 32 trophies. That's quite a short trophy list, really, and I quite like it when they do that, because it means it's a bit easier to track what you're meant to be doing. When there's 50 or more trophies, sometimes it's very easy to forget one of them, and you'll be doing a playthrough and you'll miss something important because you've just forgotten there's so many to remember. But here you've got a few multiplayer trophies at the beginning. In fact, there's a fair few, but I don't think they involve a huge amount of play. So you've got win one operation, I guess it's win a match. Use a bolt-action rifle to kill an enemy scout. Now the scouts, I'm guessing, are the snipers, so the whole idea is that you, I guess the bolt-action rifles are going to be the sniper rifles in the game, because it's based around World War I, so that's basically just sniping another sniper. But of course, some of the scouts are probably going to equip other weapons besides sniper rifles, so you probably just get that. If you use a sniper rifle enough, that will likely pop almost straight away, I would imagine. Then we've got complete 25 squad orders. That's just when your squad leader kind of highlights something on the map and tells your squad to go and capture it or whatever. That's again something that will pop almost automatically if you play enough of the game. earn 450 war bonds, and I think this is like the currency. I've not played the beta, but from what I've read, it seems like war bonds are like the currency that you can use to buy new weapons and things like that. So again, just play time involved. I don't think there's any skill related to that. Reach rank 10, and then you've got to reach rank 1. Oh, you've got to reach support rank. Right, okay, so you've got to reach rank 2 with each of the different classes. Now, I'm not sure if that's your overall XP rank, or maybe it's sort of your rank within the game, because sometimes you have upgrades in Battlefield where if you do well for a while and you don't die, then you sort of raise a level up, and once you reach one level, it gives you a bonus. Maybe you take less damage from explosives or whatever, and then the next time you keep leveling up, and then obviously as soon as you die, you lose any bonuses you've got. So it could be that. But here, look, rank 2. Yeah, it's funny this, because they're all golds, and I'm kind of thinking rank 2 in multiplayer, surely that's not very high, but it could be that because this trophy here is silver for reaching rank 1 with all 4 of them, it could be that ranking up an actual specific class takes a while, so who knows. But that's going to be interesting to see. It doesn't seem to me like it's going to be very difficult unless it does require you to rank up within a match. But we'll see how that works when the game comes out. Now we've got the story missions here, so we've got to complete what looks like only 5 story missions. Now there may be more in between them, but I don't think there is because of how the rest of the trophies are structured. So it looks as though there's only 5 missions in the actual campaign, because the rest of these trophies here, look, refer to collecting or unlocking all of the codex entries in those same 5 missions. Now these codex entries are sort of challenges. They're either related to challenges, or some of them may be related to just completing the level on different difficulties, things like that. They're just challenges that you can complete in each level, and they carry over to multiplayer as well. There are codex entries that you can unlock in multiplayer for doing whatever, like getting a certain amount of kills with a weapon or things like that. So I think the difficulty of the Platinum is probably going to be determined by how difficult some of these codex entries are to earn, because later on, you'll also notice that you have to complete all the challenges in the campaign. So I'm not sure how the challenges and the codex entries sort of integrate together, or whether they're completely different. Maybe one contributes towards the other, but you do have to complete all the challenges in the campaign. So some of them could be tricky. We don't know until we see a full list. I think there probably is a full list. If you want to look online, you'll probably be able to find them all. But even then, it's quite difficult to see or to gauge how difficult it's going to be just from looking at the list. Collect all field manuals. So there's obviously collectibles in the campaign. Then you've got basically just a list of like 3 or 4 basic, I guess, miscellaneous trophies that you earn in the campaign as well. So you've got mostly campaign-based trophies related to completing all the challenges, and then you've got to level up all your different classes in the online mode and do a few other bits and pieces. So it doesn't look too bad. It looks like the Platinum may well be more than doable for the majority of you. So there we have it, guys. We've got the Battlefield trophies there. We've got a couple of easy Platinums. We've got Grand Prix, Rock and Racing for those of you that don't have a VR headset. And for the few of you that do, the one I recommend is Job Simulator if you're after some trophies, some nice easy trophies, and if you want to pick it up from the opposite region as well, depending on where you're from, then you'll be able to earn them twice. The rest of the VR games are ones that I'm going to try out when I get a chance, and I'll let you know maybe in next week's episode or the week after what they end up being like. We're not going to do a review of my account this week because I've had so much work on. I haven't really played on my account much, and the few games that I have done have been on blank accounts. They're not synced to my account yet, so it's not really worth looking at the Stay Patient sort of trophy update this week. But there was a couple things I was going to mention. First of all, I had an idea for a Patreon reward, and I was interested to see your guys' feedback on whether you thought it would be interesting or something that would kind of appeal to you, I suppose. What I was thinking is, because I'm hoping to put out more top 10 videos, and I'm hoping to make that a key sort of aspect of my channel. I have one that's nearly finished, really. I'm working on another top 10 easiest and fastest platinum video. But what I was thinking is I could start including your guys' gameplay in those top 10 videos. But the reason I would make it a reward for subscribing on Patreon is because I wouldn't want to give away the content of the next top 10 video to everybody on my channel. Because what it would involve is obviously putting up a video on Patreon for my subscribers saying, hey guys, you know, I'm doing another top 10. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet, but if any of you want to send me footage for these 10 games, and of course credit you guys if your footage is chosen for that video. But if I was to do that on YouTube itself, if I was going to put up the video on YouTube, then it would be almost pointless putting up the top 10 video itself, because everyone would know which games were going to be included in it. So it would be like an exclusive thing just for my Patreon subscribers. They would get the opportunity to not only get a sneak peek at which games were going to show up on the top 10, but they would have the opportunity to actually have their footage included in the final video. So let me know what you think of that idea, guys. Something to mull over. And the last thing, actually, before we leave PSN profiles and end the video, there was one game I kind of wanted to sort of recommend to you guys. It's Dragon Quest Builders. Now, anyone who's played a Dragon Quest game will know that they're quite popular. They're very popular in Japan. They're quite simple, but they're pretty cool RPGs with typical, very typical RPG, Japanese RPGs, sorry. You've got, quite a large party. It's all quite cute, but, there's a decent amount of depth in it. They're a lot of fun to play. And this Dragon Quest Builders is like a spin-off of the series, the Dragon Quest series, and it involves a very sort of Minecraft-style layer of gameplay. So if you watch any gameplay of it or watch a trailer for it, it will make more sense. It's basically like playing Minecraft, very, very similar. Everything is in blocks still. You mine stuff, you break stuff down, you use it to craft and create more things, useful items and stuff. But it's an actual RPG as well. So whereas Minecraft has kind of got an adventure mode, this has actual RPG elements. It's a fully fledged RPG, just like the usual Dragon Quest games, but it has that building side as well, the crafting and the mining and all that added in, which sounds really cool. And if you check out some reviews of it, IGN gave it an 8.9, which is really high. To me, that's basically a 9 out of 10. I apologize if you could hear a motorbike going by then. But yeah, 8.9, that's basically 9 out of 10. And so that's an incredibly high score. There's a lot of huge AAA releases that don't get anywhere near that score. So I want to recommend this, partly because it looks really good, it looks really fun. Sometimes these more cutesy style games are a nice break from like the hardcore shoot 'em ups and stuff. It's really nice to just sit down, relax and play something that's quite endearing and lovable. And this is definitely one of those. I really enjoyed Ni no Kuni Last Generation, and this looks like another game along those lines that just you can't help but love, It's almost like a guilty pleasure. But it's got quite a good completion. Now, this is it's not a super short game, but it's shorter than you might imagine. Although it's a Japanese RPG, it's not super, super long. If we click on the 100% list here, you'll see that people are completing it in less than 2 days. Most people around like 2 or 3 days. So it's obviously not a long play. It's probably like 15 hours, I'm guessing it will be estimated at on PlayStationTrophies.org. But it looks really cool. It looks like the kind of game that you could spend more time with if you wanted to. You can probably earn the trophies relatively quickly if you're looking for an easy, fast platinum. But if you want to, flesh it out, you want to spend more time with it, you want it to be value for money, then you can sit and spend a lot of time, I'm assuming. A bit like with Minecraft, you can get the Minecraft platinum in a few hours, really. Or you can play it for hundreds and hundreds of hours and have a lot of fun with it. So I wanted to recommend this because I've looked through the trophy set. We're not going to look through it all, trophy by trophy, but most of them just refer to things like defeating a certain number of monsters or mining a certain number of materials or crafting a certain number, all these different things that are just like not so much farming, but it's just a case of playing the game and you'll naturally be working towards the majority of the trophies. And as you can see, there are actual chapters, so you've got missions or sections to the game. It is story based, it is an RPG, so it looks like quite a cool sort of mashup of two interesting genres. So I wanted to share that with you guys. I'm going to leave you now because this has been quite a long episode, but hopefully you've enjoyed it a bit more than the last two episodes, which were a bit rushed, like I mentioned at the start. But thanks very much for watching, guys. I hope I've given you something to think about, given you some suggestions to help you, level up your trophy accounts and all that kind of thing. In the meantime, stay tuned this week. I may well have my part 2 of my, easiest and fastest platinum video up this week, fingers crossed. And I may get time to start Tomb Raider. If I do, I'll try and share some gameplay with you. But in the meantime, have a great week, guys. Thanks for all the support. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all very soon.